that this is being recorded. Over to you, Ben. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thanks, Neil, and thank you to everyone who's here participating. Looks like 72 of you, which is great. A couple of people I know. Yeah, so today, well, first, I am Ben Naismith. I'm the DOS at IHTOC60 Ben, and we're just looking at something that's come up a lot on CELTAs recently and got me thinking, so I thought I would do a little 10-minute one of these. Okay, so maybe just to start, we don't have much time for a warmer, but if you could just think to yourself for a second, what's the funniest thing you've ever seen? And it can't be the creepy guy on my picture. Okay, everyone come up with their amazing answers. Well, if you're anything like me, it's not actually so easy. A question like this, what's the funniest thing you've ever seen, is really difficult to answer. I know I couldn't do it off the top of my head. So why is this so difficult? Well, at least for me, there's too many options to choose from. We've all seen a lot of funny things in our lives. There's no context there or anything to help you out. If you ask me what was the funniest movie you've seen this year, I could maybe give you an answer, but funniest thing in my life is a bit tricky. And unless you've seen something incredibly funny that stands out, like three monkeys on a bicycle, it's a lot of pressure to come up with something incredibly funny. If you do like monkeys on bicycles, there's actually an entire blog dedicated just to pictures of monkeys on bikes. And they'll even shake for you. Okay. And yet, questions like this, what's the funniest thing you've ever seen? Trainees ask them all the time, at the beginning of lessons, at the end of lessons. And why do they do this if it's not an easy thing to do? Well, usually for good reasons, we find. Sometimes it's because they want to give some fluency practice or some freer practice. Great, that sounds good. Sometimes they want to give the learners a chance to say what they want, so they can say whatever they like about themselves, about their own lives. Related to that, yeah, sure, it's personalized, it's about them, and it gives them a chance to talk to other learners. So all of these things sound great. Oh, also it removes some artificial restrictions. So this all sounds great, and yet what happens? At least in, oops, go back, in my experience, maybe they don't really know what freer practice means, at least in my understanding of freer practice. Maybe the trainees aren't so sure how to support learners with speaking tasks, to get them ready for them. And sometimes they may not be aware of how difficult their own tasks are, both in terms of the language they need and also in terms of, like my warmer, it might just be a difficult question to answer, no matter whether you're a native speaker or not. Okay, so if this is the case, let's look at what freer practice actually is, at least, again, my understanding. So take a minute, here are some different criteria, and see which of these you think describes freer practice. I'm not sure if you can circle them like you could on the old blackboard, but if you can't, just mentally choose them in your own mind. Okay, if you've chosen yours, let's see if they are the same as my ones. Okay, so for me, all that freer practice means is that there's no one right or wrong answer, that there's multiple ways to complete the task. That while students may be encouraged to use the target language, they're not forced in any way to use certain language. I know some people argue about whether they should be encouraged to use it or not. And the last one I think is important is that there's a wide range of language that can be used to complete the task, both whatever you've been teaching, but also whatever language they have at their disposal. So as long as it's those three things for me, great, it's freer practice. Okay, so just to give an example of how we can have restrictions in real life and in freer practice and still have it be free, we're going to do a little listening. So as you listen, just try to answer these
I
two
love
questions.
to
So
hear her
do you
speak.
recognize this poem? It's a pretty
Yet well
famous
I know
one.
that music hath a
And
far
is
more
there any
pleasing
predetermined
sound.
structure? So is there any
I
restrictions
grant
in this
I
poem?
never
Okay,
saw
Neil,
a
if you can
goddess
get
go.
that going.
My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare.
Okay then. Well, Heba here says that it makes her sleep, but if you look at the comments on YouTube, there are a lot of women who really like Alan Rickman's voice. Anyways, does anyone want to type in? Anyone know that poem? No. Okay. Well, let's go to the next slide then. Let's see who it is. It's from this crazy guy. Yes, that cool hipster is Shakespeare. So that's Sonnet 130 by Shakespeare. A bunch of English teachers, and you can't name Shakespeare, for shame. Okay. And with this sonnet, there is a really sort of rigid structure. And he created this structure himself. So all of his sonnets are exactly 14 lines long. They all have iambic pentameter, so it's all da-da, 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 da-da. And in terms of rhyming, it has a really strong rhyming pattern too. So it's A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. So the lines 1 and 3 rhyme, 2 and 4, 3 and 5, and the last two rhyme as well. Okay, so I think if Shakespeare can deal with restrictions, so can we. Or if you're not so highbrow, yes, a limerick maybe. There once was a man from Nantucket. You can finish that one however you like. Okay, and you see there's restrictions in all kinds of other genres as well, in haikus with syllables, 575, with mini sagas, so 50 words, and probably the most common restricted genre, tweets. Yeah, there's more than 400 million sent every single day, so I think all of us either have used Twitter or know someone who does, so these sort of restricted freer messages are occurring all the time. Okay, and what about in ELT? Oops, the very first word there should be your spelt the other way. Never mind. So role play, this is pretty common. This one is between two neighbors, a noisy neighbor and an angry neighbor who wants them to be quiet. Okay, we've all seen role plays like this. And so something like this is definitely for your practice. You can do it however you want, but there are some restrictions. So there's a context provided for you. There are some reasons for speaking provided for you as well. So there's character motivations. And if you're the teacher, you can also predict what language they're going to need, that the neighbors are going to need language for agreeing and disagreeing, for requesting, for refusing, for all kinds of these kind of functions. And there's some other classics as well, things like alibi, you may have seen, the desert island discussions or balloon ones where you have to decide who gets tossed out of the air balloon, any kind of ranking or prioritizing, ones where they're required to use certain target language, things like murder mysteries that have a lot of built-in restrictions. And it's not just for speaking though. Oops, we seem to have a blank slide there. All right. Neil, I'm not sure where the rest of the slides have gone to, but in terms of writing, yeah, something like a chain story as well will also have a lot of restrictions. Yes. Neil, any idea on the rest of the slides?
Service.
Okay. Ah, there we go. There's a chain story. Lovely. Yeah, so something where you have to dictate the first sentence, the pairs write the next sentence, and they pass it along, and then you end up with a few different ones. Yes, if you do happen to Google chain GIF, you will get this. This is when chain stories go wrong. Lovely. How's that for a gimmick in the presentation? Okay. Yeah, so restrictions like this, again, there's a context. They're limited by how much they can write. The teacher can select what language they need, and is obviously linked to whatever the sentence that came before from their peers. Some other writing ones, random word stories, where they have to write crosswords, some of the genres we've mentioned. So there are lots of ways to restrict for your practice in writing as well. Yeah, so just to finish off, basically the idea here is just because it's freer doesn't mean that it has to be vague. So we can have lots of restrictions, and it actually prompts people to be more creative and gives them something to work with. It helps the learners to use scaffold and help them along. So I say, yeah, restrictions, definitely a good thing. If you'd like to keep in touch, please you can check out my blog, follow me on Twitter, or send me an email as well. And if anyone's in Dubai, yeah, stop by the IH and come say hello. So thank you all for stopping by for this very, very quick 10 minutes. And hopefully we'll...
Thank you very much, Ben. Great stuff there. All the way over from Dubai. And a lovely little gift there, holding up your slide for a second.